everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on Vinland Saga Season 2. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. Does it? No, it doesn't feel like it's been that long at all. I really thought that the months until between Season 1, me finishing it, and this season starting would feel a lot longer. Now, those of you that have waited for years for this, I'm sure it feels like a really long time, but I timed this just right, apparently, before Season 2's come out, because it doesn't feel like that much longer. I've been at work all day. I've been off of Discord, not on it at all. Today was a really busy day at work, and I was like, I'm just gonna avoid the channel and everything until I get done watching this episode, and I've stayed off social media. It's just been a day of a lot of stress and work, and I'm like, my throat's kind of scratchy too. It's got a bunch of drainage, so I've poured myself a hot toddy with extra honey to help heal my throat as we go into this episode. But I was thinking about episode 24 today, and it doesn't seem like that long ago. The episode was so freaking good, with it leaving off us not knowing what's happened with Thorfinn. Canute and Thorkel go off. Askeladd has died. And Thorfinn, we don't know what's going to happen to him. Leif was waiting on the boat. And we're just left in a suspended sense of mystery going into this season, thinking what's going to happen. But what a great show so far. Like, I love the realism. I love the characters. Our boy Thorfinn did not have a lot of character development in Season 1. However, it was the prologue. Technically, in terms of the overall story, there shouldn't be that much character development because Thorfinn is just being... I feel like Season 1 just had Thorfinn be this stagnant character. Like, here's our main character. Here's all these things that have happened around him that have developed over the course of Season 1. Now that these things have happened, our chess piece of Thorfinn, our pawn, can move forward. And I feel like that's where we're at with his character, but I've been very, very excited. I'm doing the very risky thing of recording on Monday nights and getting ready to release them the next day. Because of that, it's going to be unstreamable. I had the first season on Vidyard because they were bigger files and it just worked out that way. I'm going to put this season on streamable only because the files are so big on Vidyard, I would have to go to work to upload them, and my schedule can be kind of insane sometimes. It's not predictable, and I don't want to not know if I can go the next day and get it uploaded or not. Don't want to risk it. So I know if I put it on streamable, I can upload it the night before in my own home and not worry about it. So that's why the format host site has changed a little bit. But other than that, I'm also watching through Crunchyroll because as much as I like Amazon Prime, their platform for watching shows is a little wonky for reacting. When I watch regular shows on it, it's not a big deal. But for reactions, it's a little bit weird. Like y'all know, I had some issues with not syncing up the videos with the subtitles and things like that. It was kind of a mess. So I'm hoping watching it through Crunchyroll is going to help alleviate that problem. We shall see. But we got a 25-minute episode, so all right. I'm pretty excited about that and to see what all we get, but I am anime only, so please note, I do not want to know anything from the manga. Not a thing. I want to stay anime only. I'm going to be watching this show until it's over, so if you have any comments or things, or you want to talk about the manga, please spoiler tag so that I don't read them. I don't want to know. You guys can talk about it in the comment section, but I want to stay anime only and go into the series as surprised as possible. And I'm not a European history buff, so I'm going to be real surprised. I knew of Leif Erikson, but I don't know of Leif Erikson, if that makes sense. So that's where we're at. But I'm really excited, y'all, to see what the hell happens. Like, where's Thorfinn going? What are we doing? What Askeladd's gone? What's Canute gonna do? The king is dead, Canute's taken the throne, what's the brother gonna do? Like, there's all these mysteries, and I guess we'll find out. So, I hope you all enjoy this reaction and discussion, but we're gonna start this and just see what ends up happening. And we're gonna do so here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. It was a preview, so we're fine. I just watched 2 seconds into it and there was no sound, so I'm like, okay, it's a preview. I did not even think about Einar and Thorfinn being a ship. Did not even think about it. I was just like, oh, they'll become BFFs. They can totally relate to each other because this series is like the most romanceless anime I've ever watched. So I wasn't even thinking about Einar and Thorfinn being a ship, but the moment that ED, it was like some kind of like sensual music video for them, and I was like, wait a minute. I've been looking at it all wrong. This series has been so sexless that I've not even thought about Thorfinn having possibly a connection with anybody. You know, we joked about Canute in season 1, but that got like axed real quick. Einar and Thorfinn, though, Einar and Thorfinn could be the potential that the ED spells itself out, right? I feel like the ED was composed and directed by someone who's watched a lot of BL, and they were like, we can do this, right? Einar, oh my god, I don't like neutered Thorfinn. I don't like seeing Thorfinn being completely down in the dumps. I hate it. I already hate it. But we should have seen it coming. We've got to backtrack a lot. You know what this episode did not do? It did not give us the traditional Vinland Saga, like, 1865 England, did not give us the headliner of when and where this is taking place. We didn't get that at all in this episode, which was rather interesting. And I'm curious, I hope that Mappa is going to include those, but I feel like they are. I feel like this episode was just to introduce Einar, introduce him and his story, show us how very connected to Thorfinn he is. Not just through Leaf, but like thematically, and how different he is from Thorfinn as well. And to kind of show how someone can go from being full of hope and ambition and dreaming and life to showing the despair of becoming a slave, and how people become slaves and lose all sense of trying to free themselves and having this sense of freedom, or that they believe that they even have the right or option of it. Showing how slaves are made, right? Essentially was what this episode was, to show how slaves were made by breaking down their very will. And so, yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this episode, but it was mainly, I get why they didn't do the time and place, because it wasn't needed, right? And because it kind of lulls us as the audience into this false sense of, we don't think we need to know. We're like, oh, we're just learning about Einar. We don't need to know about anything involving him. It's not going to be relevant. And at the end of the episode, we get Thorfinn, and Leaf is still looking for Thorfinn, and it's not been that long, right? Leaf's still kicking it, but it's been at least a few years, because what? Thorfinn at the end of season 1 was 16 or 17. I'm assuming the way he looks now, he's at least like, it seems like it's been 4 or 5 years. So maybe he's in his early 20s now. Like, our boy Thorfinn became a man. Like, puberty hit him hard, and he became a man, like, overnight. I was not expecting that. I thought we'd have at least some more time with feral puppy dog Thorfinn. No, he's a full-grown dog now. Okay. Adults can do adult things now. I feel so sad. It's kind of the obligatory Attack on Titan spoilers. We're not even 3 minutes into this discussion. Obligatory Attack on Titan spoilers. It feels like Eren. It feels like you have young feral Eren that becomes dejected, hopeless Eren going into season 4. And now we have feral little wild child Thorfinn, who's become dejected, depressed Thorfinn going into the beginning of this, right? The only difference is that Eren didn't really have anybody to bring him out of that funk, and looks like Thorfinn might have someone. So, into Attack on Titan spoilers, but man, it looks like Thorfinn might have somebody to get him out of his spunk. Him and Einar can learn together and both decide to rally up and go back, because there's so much that's different about Einar and Thorfinn, but so much that I was like sitting there the whole episode being like, they'd be great to talk to each other. They have so much they could share that they have in common. And there's so much that they could learn from one another. And the ED makes it seem like that, Einar is going to become Thorfinn's little anchor. And I'm like, I'm rooting for you, Einar. And y'all thought I wasn't going to get a BL ship in this series. Ha! The Vinland Vinland Saga is the gift that keeps on giving. However, this was a horrifically dour. There's a part of me that wants to have like a happy face in the thumbnail. And I'm like, that will be completely against the mood 90% of this episode, because this episode was horribly depressing and sad. Very, very harsh themes being thrown our way. But I want to say real quick, that OP, Canute, the best part of that OP is Canute. By far, the best part of that OP is not only seeing the blood from the crown completely like drench Canute in blood. I love that visual, but him putting it on his head, Canute has like a soul patch now because gotta prove that he's gotten older. He looks less princess-like and more like a king, right? But showing that he's bathed in the blood that he's done and is like, you know, the scar opening up. I love that visual. It's the best part of the OP so far. Freaking love it. I love the OP and Edie. The songs, great. The visuals, wonderful. It's kind of a tease that Mappa took the same engines revving that Wit Studio had. I'm like, man, Mappa, you just took everything. Hot Toddies, excellent choice for Vinland Saga. But yeah, we need to talk about this episode and get through it. I guess now that we go back, Thorfinn, looking at him, and so he looks a bit like Thor's, but he looks like his mom too. He cooks kind of, I guess, more like Thorkel too, with the facial hair and everything. But the idea of him drowning and the idea of the arms, I love the idea River is the OP. I love the idea of the skulls and everything splitting and the hands rising up. Mappa loves to draw them some hands and the arms like crisscrossing and the blood in the water. Oh, it's great. But I love that visual of Canute. I want to get close up with Canute. Canute he has the scar, and Canute still looks very handsome and youthful. But he's got like the little facial hair, the patch of hair on his chin to make himself look older, and the scar that he has opening up. Oh, like a mouth or like an eye. It's so grisly. And then, yeah, we have the young Thorfinn. He's gone, essentially. We don't know about the knife, though. Does he still have the knife? Was it lost? I like Askeladd still in the OP. He's there with us in spirit. But, okay, the very opening there about carving. Carve it into your flesh. And then we have, like, the tattoo, the symbol there. So, make ideas about carving. We're going to put them over here. So, the idea of carving. Put this, I guess that's a great place to start out. Very, very symbolic and thematic. So we have into flesh. And you can take that one of two ways. I took it one of two ways. You have the tattoo that the man has, but you also have like a brand. I thought that this episode being called Slave would entail them getting branded, right? That it's a sign that they're property of someone else. Carving it into your flesh. And then we go to the soil, and we have like the different thing of carve it into the land. So into land, like territory, basically, that you own it, right? You carve into flesh that you own either your own flesh or someone else's. You carve it into the land, like that you own it, right? You carve it into the sea. And they show the seafarers showing that you travel, right? You carve into the sea with the boats that are used for exploration. You have that you do, right? And then beyond that, you have carve it. What else do we have? Carve it into your enemies. Into enemies. Meaning that you overtake them. I feel like maybe the carving into the flesh is less a brand for slavery, more into your own flesh, like a tattoo. So you carve it into your enemies in battle, right? You carve it into your spoils. So that's it into the spoils. And that might be the brand with the slaves, right? And with battle. Okay. So what else we got here? Carve it into your spoils, and then carve it. And it shows them making the boats, shows them killing the animals, carve it. Shows them doing everything, and then fighting. And then them winning and overtaking it. I will say this, you can tell this is Mappa and their animation because this is not an Attack on Titan spoiler really, but the animation Mappa took over season 4 from Wit Studio. They have a tendency, Mappa does, to animate people similarly, especially in series like this. I feel like the people in this series are animated, at least the people in this that have like the eyes that you can't see what they look like, they look very similar to like people without eyes that they've shown in flashbacks in Attack on Titan when Mappa's animated it. So very similar. For a second I thought I was watching Attack on Titan, and then you show the man winning in battle and he goes up to the woman with the baby and like has like the baby's cheek and he like carves it and has the blood over its cheek. Insanity. Mappa, for the record, cannot animate babies. They make really ugly babies. None of their babies look cute. No, I was like, the Mappa animators are just like, eh. They've never seen a cute baby before. Carve that warmth into me. Oh, okay. And finally, we have carving the warmth into me. And that warmth, the flesh, the land into the sea, that warmth is this idea of freedom, right? Because it's like you carve into your flesh, you get to choose what to do. You carve into the territory, you farm your own land that you own. You carve into the sea, you choose to explore how you want to do. You carve into your enemies, you fight them in battle. You carve into the spoils, they're things that you have gotten. So they're all things, that warmth is that sense of freedom, right? And so we have two characters in this episode that do not have that freedom anymore. They don't have that warmth, right? And I think it's so interesting that you have Einar, who is trying to he's trying to hone himself for battle, but he's not a fighter, he's a farmer, right? So I feel like at this point, we need to establish that we have Einar, who I really like Einar. I feel for his character, right? His character went through more character development in the span of 23 minutes than Thorfinn went through in 23 episodes. I feel like, right? Poor Einar. But yeah, so Einar and Thorfinn, we need to talk about them and how they are similar and how they are different. I guess we'll put the differences up here, right? We'll put the differences up here, and I want to put Einar and Thorfinn down here. So we have our differences and we have our similarities. And right off the bat, we have that they come from very different upbringings, right? Einar was a farmer. He was a farmer, and Thorfinn was... Well, it's interesting. They both... I guess I'm going to take that back. We're going to talk about their backgrounds of being different, but both of them being farmers. Both of them being farmers with a mom and a sister. In that case. The big difference between them, though, is that Einar, we see an absent father, and there is no, heritage that we know of. There's no, special blood lineage. They were part of this, general's sons, all this and that. It's just he's a farmer with his mom and his sister. Their dad is no longer there. We assume he's passed. Whereas Thorfinn lost his father in battle, but he grew up with heritage that was ignored. So with Einar, we don't know if he had any heritage to him. We don't get that far in the story. We don't know that much about his past other than where he's at with his mom and sister. But Thorfinn, we know he had heritage, and his father just kind of brushed it aside, kind of didn't want to have that be a thing. But Einar is instantly he's kind of like a nice guy. He is a nice guy. And he's just, his family, they're so wholesome, right? And, his sister throws a knife at him. It's funny because he has the strong sister. What's interesting is that his mother is physically strong, whereas Thorfinn's mother was constantly ailing physically. So there's a little bit of a difference there, but both of them, I would say, mentally are anchors to their family, right? And the sisters are both strong women as well. Although, God, we talk about the difference between them. We don't even know what's happening with Ilva or anything. Like, we've no idea. But they have this peaceful village they live in that has been raided before and built back up. So as far as we know, maybe Einar's dad did die in battle like Thorfinn's did, and we just don't know, right? We don't really get any explanation about that. But the mom's asking Einar why he's training, and he's talking about, I've got to protect this place. So that's really curious. That's a big difference between him and Thorfinn right off the bat. Einar talks about he wanted to protect his family. And Thorfinn wanted to leave home to go into battle. It was like the idea of going into it for the glory of battle and everything, and to get out of this podunk town. Einar wants to stay in that podunk town and protect his family. So there's a big difference between the two of them right off the bat. So again, that contrast, I think, is going to make for a much more interesting relationship with them once they get to talking to one another. And the mom goes, they talk about their dad, like, I'm sure dad would, blah, blah, blah. And she says, this place is peaceful. And he says, Dad died protecting us. Okay, so the dad died protecting them in battle. So, again, I guess we can put that in actually how they're similar. He died protecting them. Because Thor's kind of did too. So, all right, so that is more of a similarity. And she said that even though they lost, everything was rebuilt. And the mom, she's just kind of like, we should just, be happy we have what we have. They have this peaceful village. And then Einar, it's immediately destroyed. And it's an all too familiar scene, right? We've seen this scene how many times before in the last season where everything's just destroyed and they get raided? Again, we don't exactly know when this happens. So my thoughts are that we're going next episode to backtrack maybe. Maybe we'll learn from Thorfinn what's been going on. Or maybe that'll happen episode 3 or 4. Maybe Thorfinn seems like he's not very talkative right now. So Einar's going to have to get Thorfinn to open up and befriend him before he gets anything from him. And I wonder now that Einar knows that that's Thorfinn, he's going to be like, hey, Leif's looking for you. And well, maybe when he asks him about Leif looking for him, that will trigger something with Thorfinn, and Thorfinn will recall, and we, the audience, will see a flashback of what happened prior leading up to this moment. Because it's a very big narrative decision to show us Thorfinn like years later, and then we need to backtrack and see what happened after Askeladd's death. They're going to backtrack to Askeladd. They are. Because they're going to want to show us Askeladd, right? But They try to run, and then the mom dies. She gets cut with the arrow. And then we have the flowers, the three blooms that are red. Again, more Attack on Titan spoilers, although this is like episode 1. I instantly thought of episode 1 of Attack on Titan with Carla telling Eren and Mikasa to leave her behind. And there was no Hannes to tell Einar and Lotta to keep going. There was no Hannes there to save them. So they just stayed there and ended up getting swallowed up by the Titans. So, last Attack on Titan reference for this episode, I promise. Last one. But yeah. And man, I was really afraid when those guys showed up that Lotta was going to get... I was afraid they were going to assault Lotta. I really was afraid they were going to drag her away and assault her. And I was like, that's the last thing I really want to see in this episode. But man, girl, when you take out the pin, you aim for the neck. Don't aim for the shoulder. You had his head right there. You could have stabbed his brain. Girl. And then they end up... He just killed her because she was expendable. And then they drag Einar away for beer money. And he gets drugged from his home. So the circumstances, again, are quite dissimilar, right? So the circumstances are his home was destroyed and he was drugged away. Oh, that's under similarities. Take that back. So yeah, Einar was drugged away from his home. He didn't have a choice. His family killed. We have him drugged from home. And he has no home to go back to. And meanwhile, Thorfinn, he ran from home. And up until, we're assuming Thorfinn, it is assumed that after the whole thing with Canute and Thorkel and Askeladd dying, we assume that Thorfinn was taken and sold as a slave. And Uncle Thorkel was like, you had your chance, sorry. And Canute's like, you slashed my face, sorry, I got a kingdom to run, don't have time for you, Thorfinn. But I'm assuming that but up until then, he could have gone home. And that idea that Einar says, what a lucky man. Somebody's looking for him. He has someone that loves him and is looking for him. And Einar's like, I have no one looking for me. Like that contrast where we have Leif looking and Einar has no one. Ugh! But yeah, Einar was drug away from home, has no home to go home to, family all dead. Thorfinn, he ran away from home, could have gone home several times, chose not to, and has, as far as we know, a family to go home to, but he just hasn't done it, right? But the thing of it is, and I love this moment when they're out at the sea, and we have this text pop up, right? We have this text come up, and I want to get to it, where it says, a fir on a barren land withers. So a tree on a barren land withers, with neither bark nor leaves. So too does the man loved by none. Why should he live a long life? So this is the crazy thing. Einar, the funny thing about it, and I'll kind of put it over here, is that you have Einar who has no one to live for, but he still moves forward to a point, right? He still keeps moving forward for some reason. And then you have Thorfinn, who has a family and people that he could be living for, but he seems to have given up. And I feel like that this is why E and T are meant to help each other, because Einar is going to be like, look, I don't have anybody to live for, but I'm still going to try my hardest to keep living. You should too. You have people that you could be living for. Quit being a big sad sack, Thorfinn. And obviously we don't know the whole full story with Thorfinn, but I feel like ever since Askeladd's died, Thorfinn's just like, maybe he feels like, what's the point? He spent his whole life chasing after someone that is now gone, and so he doesn't feel like he has that purpose anymore. But it's interesting. I mean, basically, the idea that once you strip everything from someone, they will lose the will to live, and they will lose that strength to try to keep being independent and moving forward. And that's part of the process of making a slave. You take away their home, you take away their family, you take away their dreams, you take away possibilities. They're left with nothing, and then they lose hope, and they think, well, this is the best I can do. I guess I'll make this work. And that's kind of where Einar ends up. He ends up at the point where he's like, they tell me if I'm just obedient, I can live. I don't want to die, so I guess I'll settle for this. And he starts to lose hope, right? And that's when he meets Leif. And he decides that, I feel like Leif gives Einar a little bit of motivation where he's like, man, there are still decent people in the world looking for others and trying to save them, right? So I guess, but even he doesn't know. We'll get to the wheat field in a minute. But yeah, them on the ship. I kept thinking he would see Thorfinn on the ship, but I guess we're going to skip that, past that. And then the one girl just about to die, and they're like, just chuck her overboard because she's, dead weight. I feel like Einar is extremely, and I guess this is a difference, he is extremely compassionate. He is extremely compassionate about others, whereas Thorfinn has always been a lone wolf, right? Just the difference between them, opposites attract, right? And then we just see him. For a minute, I thought that maybe Einar wanted to jump into the sea, but he doesn't. He doesn't end up doing that. And then we go to where they've made a port, and they fatten everybody up, put nice makeup on them, let them eat, give them some liquor to improve their color so that they'll look nice for the people trying to buy a slave, right? And they're just sold off. It reminded me of the droids in Star Wars. But the thing of it is, Einar runs away. And for a second, we see this idea where Einar, he talks about being self-sufficient and trying to like live on their own, but they keep going back to I'm assuming the Vikings. The funny thing is that, I guess this could be a difference, is that Einar actively tries to get away, and Thorfinn, they both try to get away, but then I think they both come to the same conclusion that they don't. Well, Einar's thing is he doesn't know, he has no home to go to. And Thorfinn doesn't know what he'd do if he did go home. So even though Thorfinn does have a home to go to, he doesn't know what he would do if he did go home. And so there is a connection there. That whole point in the woods where Einar is trying to run away, it mirrors Thorfinn a lot when he first got off the ship when he was a little kid. And there is some similarity there. I can see the parallels that are being drawn, but Einar's situation is much different than Thorfinn's. It is different to a big point, right? And then I do like the design of the one Viking with the scar over his face is rather interesting. And maybe they're not Vikings. I don't know. Looking at their clothing, I mean, they could be Vikings. I guess they are. But they make an example out of Einar, right? And they just beat him up to say, don't go away. And then they have him being whipped by the one guy that's getting off on the fact that he's whipping Einar. And Einar says, I have to live. The funny thing is that we really don't know, is he living to carry on his mom's will? Because his mother was like, run away and live. You have to live. I'm assuming that's why he's trying to survive, because he's living on what his mother wanted for him. Thorfinn's whole thing was he was living for revenge on his father. So two very different reasons to keep going. And by the end of it, both of them seem to have lost that. They seem to have lost that passion when they get to the farm at the very end. By the time we find Thorfinn, he's lost that whole reason for him to live. The revenge that he was going to get on Askeladd is gone. So he has no reason to live. And with Einar, his whole reason to live, which had to do with carrying on his mother's will and living and being free, that's all gone as well. So both of them are in horrible places when they end up at the farm. But Leif has to make an appearance, right? Also want to make note, Einar is shredded. He's got like an 8-pack. And I like that he says, I have to live, and his like hands and stuff twitch. Like I feel like under the surface with both Thorfinn and Einar, there's this urge, this like primal urge for them to fight back. But it's just been repressed so much by the circumstances that they're in, becoming a slave, that it's just like, it's there, it's under the surface, it's itching, it's festering, but it just isn't going anywhere yet, right? But then poor Leif is still looking for Thorfinn. Bless his heart. I'm like, I want Leif to find Thorfinn before he dies. I do, because Leif's an old man, and we're talking like the 1600s. These guys, or 1300s even, they didn't live to be 80 back then. Leif needs to find him, damn it, before he dies. And then this blonde guy manages to take Einar with him. And he seems fine. I guess, it's the weirdest thing. He seems fine for a slave owner, It could be worse. Maybe it's going to be worse. We don't know much about him, but I mean, he doesn't seem like he's a crazed maniac like the guy that was whipping Einar, but in the same vein, he's, still buying slaves, but then again, could be worse. But the thing that gets me is that when they show up to his farm, he keeps saying, I have to live. And it's like, well, why does he have to live? What is he living for? That's the question. And I feel like Thorfinn's going to become the one he lives for. It's like, I'm waiting for it. I've waited a whole season, damn it, to be able to ship something in this show, and it's finally happening. Oh, you guys are going to have to deal with this. I hope you're all ready. But the thing that gets me is that they get to the farm, and he talks about like, oh, I'll introduce you to all the other slaves and everything, but first take a look at my farm. And of course, Einar sees it, and it's like the gladiators. It's all the wheat fields and everything, and it's beautiful. And all Einar can think of is it reminds him of his home that he's not getting back. And so it's like, he's like, I've made it to this place that looks like a paradise, but none of this will be mine. I'm going to work for someone else the rest of my life and be a slave and die a slave. And I'll never have my family or my home or my freedom again. And it just like, it seems like it hits him all at once. And the scary thing is that wheat field, it seems like Vinland, right? It reminds you of Vinland from the beginning. And suddenly the meaning, the context shifts just a little bit, because we think of these beautiful fertile lands and fields, we think of Vinland. And now we can't think of that because Vinland's supposed to be this paradise, and it's not for Einar. It's just a source of, it reminds him of everything he's lost and will never get back, right? And he thinks of that time where he's eating dinner with all them. And he's like, was that really true, Mother? He's like, was it? And he asks himself, live or die, I'll never be free again. Because, yeah, he's like, my freedom has been taken from me. And I want him to get it back so much, damn it! I want it! I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him, dang it! He's like, you still think I haven't lost? Because he's been trying to tell himself this whole time that he's not the loser, right? Because she said at the beginning, she's like, we're not the losers. We still have this peaceful environment. And he's like, how can I be the winners? How can I not be the loser in this scenario? How? Oh my gosh. And then of course, we go to the woods and he's like, I don't even know what the point of living. I didn't even know what the point of living was anymore. So this is told to us in the past tense, right? So we're looking back on Einar from before, and we're going to go now into the present. So I'm so curious. We'll talk about questions here in a minute. He's like, I didn't know what the point of living was anymore until I met him. He didn't say that. I'm inserting my own thoughts into this. But that's when he's like, okay, and we hear the woodcutter. Thorfinn, it's me. Come here. I want to see how Thorfinn got to this point. Because, of course, Thorfinn... The thing is, Thorfinn, you wouldn't know by seeing him in this state. He's been through all this shit from season 1. All these battles, everything. And he looks so plain Jane coming out of the woods there. Right? And, God, what they reveal, like, we see him, like, in his threadbare shoes and stuff with the axe. And his hair chopped shorter, or it's around his chin. I'll be bought by a good master and do my best to serve him. And in quotation marks. As long as I'm an obedient slave, I won't starve. And then it's just like, I was beginning to think that way. Until I met Thorfinn! And then it's like love at first sight for Einar. And then he sees... And Thorfinn, our boy, has become a young man. It's so crazy because he kind of does look like Thor's. From like the chin and the eyes, he looks like Thor's, but he has the hair all down in his face. And he just looks defeated. That was how Thorfinn and I met. And Thorfinn doesn't look too crazy tall. He looks taller, right? But they're in this woods and everything. And then we see Thorfinn and the Edie in the hay bale. We see, I'm trying to see if we notice anything, but we see like him like crying out. We see his father, Asglad. There's something else. And we see, he looks so young there, and we see him like falling into the water. And he's got his hair, when he has his hair pulled back, he looks more like Thorkel. So I'm going to be excited to see what he looks like when his hair is pulled back then. And obviously he's tormented. And then there's Einar coming out of the smoke to like lift him up. I swear it's like a music video of them as a couple. I can't. And he has all the scars and stuff on his hands. And then him going towards and reaching out for Einar. And it's his light. Y'all, you expected me not to ship after watching the CD? You expected me not to? You all should have known better. But yeah, and so he's older there. Yeah, he looks a lot like Thor's in that moment. And then Einar has his hand on his shoulder. Oh my God. And then the two trees chopped down beside him. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm already shipping it. It's over. Canute's out. Einar Einar is in! Although Knut looks really great in that OP. So it'll be interesting. So, questions. Leif's still alive, so it's not been an exuberant amount of time. And Thorfinn's grown up to be a young man. So, I'm going to assume Thorfinn was 17 at the end of season 1. So, I'm going to guess maybe 5 years have passed. Maybe 5 years. Maybe he's like 22. Maybe. 22 sounds about right. That he's hit puberty and grown up. That seems about right. That would give enough time to see what Knut's been up to all this time and what Thorkel and them are up to. So yeah, 5 years seems about right. But my theory is that next episode we're gonna backtrack and see how Thorfinn got to this place, how Thorfinn ended up here, what ended up happening. Maybe we'll get a timestamp, and then I can go back to season 1 and compare how long it's been. I don't want to know, so please don't tell me in the comments. I don't want to know how long it's been. I don't want any information. I want to be surprised when we find out in the show, but I'll be curious to know when we get there. But Vinland Saga's back, baby. This episode was great. I'm all on board Einar's character. I'm all on board it. I'm ready to go. Thorfinn, I don't like seeing sad it's the emo Thorfinn is different than depressed Thorfinn. I'll take, I want Thorfinn to have character development, but I want him to move forward, not be in this stagnant rut. And I feel like Einar is going to help him get out of it. But I can't wait to hear your thoughts down below. Please, no spoilers, hints or clues. But I'm curious to know what you thought of this episode. Sorry if you weren't expecting me to ship this season, but it's too late. Blame the ED. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. This is going to be so exciting watching week to week with you all. Monday nights are going to be fun. So I can't wait. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yes, I will see you all next week with episode 2 of season 2 of Vinland Saga. Bye.